What's good? What's good? Welcome back to another episode of Unapologetically Black, Never Broken, Always Empowered. I am Brittany, joined by my co-hosts Jamal and Shay. What's up? How y'all feeling?
Feeling good. Turn it down just a little bit more.
I was working on
okay.
it.
Okay, because it was like how we was talking about last time. It's like you and the music competing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you.
I'm good. I'm sleepy, man. I'm in full hibernation mode, so my body wants to do nothing but lay down and go to sleep and watch Netflix sometimes in between time.
If I have the energy, I feel that.
Yeah, a friend of mine put me onto another Brittany put me onto The Center on Netflix, and it's pretty good.
The Center,
the Center,
circle?
Like church.
Oh,
The Center. Yeah, that it's good. It's like an anthology. There's one character that stays the same, but like he's a detective and he's working on these cases. Every season is a different case or a person that he's looking into, and it's all these weird situations. So it's good though. If y'all want to check it out, I recommend.
So we're currently finishing Good Girls. Like we're almost done completely. So I'm sure we'll be in search of a new show soon. Have you seen that?
Good Girls?
Yeah.
No, but it's like a comedy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This one is totally different as a drama. I'm just letting you know, so the tone is way different. Way different.
No, that's fine. You know, whatever.
So you gotta prepare yourself for that after you just watch something that was like
own tone, and I go with it. So I'm cool with that. Right, cool. What's good, Michelle? Michelle said howdy, and then she also said justice for Jamal. Never forget anime court.
I've been getting my ass whooped. All right. First of all, I lost in anime court because the judge was biased. Second, I got beat up this morning by Brick Hands Brittany, so I got a busted lip.
Wow, domestic toxic femininity, man.
It was absolutely an accident. Yeah, right. It was toxic femininity.
That's what they say. That's what they always say. It was an accident.
It's an accident.
Because it might be the opposite end. It's an accident, right?
Why did you make my fist hit your face?
Yeah.
Look, Ryan was like, he was like, "Mommy, beat him up." So I took a couple chest shots. I'm like, And then I went to swing at his face, and I came up short, but he turned into it.
There's no turning.
This is being recorded, so if you need evidence, if you ever need evidence, you know what I'm saying?
We're coming back to this. 50 seconds in. This is my divorce. Lawyer, if you're listening, this is it. This is the clip I need.
Turn into it. Anyways, but yeah, we've been good. And I do think that is the perfect story to just segue into toxic femininity.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to start this off because I feel like it's multifaceted. There's so many different layers to this. And we have tackled as a podcast toxic masculinity in a couple different ways. Like the topic has come up in a few different ways. We've had the conversations, but we've never brought it up from the women, the women's side, from the female toxic side. And, so I guess I'm going to kick this off with asking you all how you would define toxic femininity. What does that mean?
Who will be the first person to be like, it doesn't exist? It's a man-made patriarchal structure. Right. He's going to be the first one.
Kicking off.
That's where Rich usually steps in and says it, but he ain't here. So go on, Rich Jr., what you got for us?
Michelle. she was the one.
Michelle's kicking it off.
See, we needed Michelle on the show as a guest.
Right.
So I'll start. I think toxic femininity for me is when you hear these women that say, well, it's your job as a man, or why didn't you do this as a man? Or, it's it's not just a man's day, it's everybody's holiday, like as far as Father's Day goes. And like anytime that they put down a man in response to anything else going on, and they go out of their way to do it. I'm not saying that dudes can't be wrong. I know plenty of them. Shit, I've been plenty of in times I've been that wrong guy. But don't go out of your way to put a man down just because he's a male. And you complain and you empower and you try to say, oh, women need this empowerment. But I don't know if y'all noticed this, but little boys don't get the same empowerment. Like there are no Little Boys Rock or Little Boys Run the World.
There's
or
Black Boy Joy now.
Yes, there is Black Boy Joy now.
Yeah.
But that's created for the Black boys that are too hard and they need something to soften up. Like you're being told all your life, don't cry, don't do this, don't do that. That's soft. And like now it's like, nah, I need you to cry. I need you to be open. I need you to like tell me how you feel. And that's foreign to a lot of males. Like that's foreign to me to a certain point until I met you. Like it wasn't as told to just be in touch with your feelings.
So piggybacking off of how you would define it, I would say that to me it's the weaponization of being a woman or like of your gender. So like essentially using being a woman to either get out of some shit or to put someone else down. I mean, yeah, but pretty privilege and doing it deliberately are two different things. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
pretty privilege
don't have that same option.
I understand what you're saying, but that's not my fault. Like, I'm keeping it real. Like, it's that.
Yeah, no, it's
someone does something for me because they find me attractive. That's not me deliberately, honestly doing anything to get that. So I wouldn't say pretty privilege is the same as weaponizing my femininity. So like weaponizing my femininity would be like, essentially like villainizing men or coming up with like a false victim statement, but because I'm a woman, because I'm a woman, people believe it. What is Michelle said? I think
I've been reading, so I'm waiting
to try to police femininity. For example, TERFs.
I feel like I want to address these things, but after what I guess my idea of toxic femininity is, and it's not, I don't know, it can be kind of nebulous in a way because toxic femininity for me has many layers. One thing I learned when studying spirituality or occult studies and all the esotericism is that you'll learn that a symbol or a word, for instance, has many meanings, right? Many ways to interpret it, many ways that it shows up in the world. So toxic femininity is what we see now. I'm going to say to me, Michelle, what you are talking about right now, I'm going to say what sounds like your baseline of thinking as far as toxic femininity is toxic femininity. It's a lack of accountability. It's when we delay everything to patriarchal structure or the patriarchy or whatever, that's toxic femininity. It's a lack of accountability within one's own self to say, hey, I have the ability to be toxic on my own, separate of a man. It looks like telling boys and men to suck it up, to you know what I'm saying, to just bear the brunt of it, to actually not taking into account, again, here's that word, accountability, what our brothers actually go through and their stories. Toxic femininity looks like take me out for a $200 dinner date on the first date. I don't know you. Why would I do that? Toxic femininity looks like you believing that I owe you something, right? When you because you exist. And those things aren't separate of other elements, i.e. entitlement, etc. Things that have nothing to do with femininity in itself. But those things are components of something that is showing up now. When we look at politics, Michelle, you said something about for example, TERFs. I see many feminists policing femininity on the opposite end. They look at people who take on more traditional roles as, oh, she shouldn't be doing that. Why would she stay at home and serve her man? That's her choice. If being a feminist is about a woman's right to choose, that's her choice. Mm-hmm. But instead, you throw all these epithets or whatever. She's subjugated. She's this. She's that. Maybe that is just what that woman chose for her life and likes for her life. We could have all of these other stuff going on, but at base level, I think a lot of people are choosing what they believe is right for them and how they want to partner. and then you do have to get into what does it mean to be feminine, and that's going to vary for other people, different people. But I know that, like, for me, there's a subset of characteristics that feed into what is masculine and what is feminine separately from each other, and then there's a place where they converge. So yeah, femininity has many forms.
So I agree. As far as the definition of what does it mean to be feminine, I think this is, to me, the difference between toxic femininity and toxic masculinity is that toxic masculinity takes this overly like macho man type of ideology of what makes you a man, and then holds boys and men to that standard that is, almost impossible for you to be both human and a man by those standards, right? Mm-hmm. With toxic femininity, it's not so much these are the traits that make you a woman. In some cases it is, but that's not so much what it is. It's more, you are a woman. Now, what can you get for, like, how can you use that to your advantage? And I think where you see that in today's society and like right now is city girls, right? Everyone's like city girls up, city girls this, city girls that, like, and not so much, the actual artists, but the mentality, like what can I get? Who can I scam?
How can you seduce and scheme your way to the top?
Right. Like, and I think that is more when I'm thinking of it, mm-hmm. like that's that mindset. And it's not so much, a woman requires you to, wear a dress and speak politely and not curse and, all of that. It's not so much that from societal's view. It's, use your gender, use your sexuality to get to the next level.
It's just, and I guess we can look at what Michelle, I think, if I could go with the internalized patriarchy, right? Where we had this long time, and not every man at all, not any, I don't know any men who act the way that men act on TV when I say this, because I feel like it's a dramatization of men, and then it becomes the reality for people, right? When people play into whatever they see on TV, is an objectification of women, right? Like, I do see that thing happening. I know that it happening. It's the reason why a lot of us hate men called females. You know what I'm saying? You don't call men males, so why are you calling us females, right? I have that conversation with my godson all the time. You are reducing this woman down to an object, right? It's a way to dehumanize her in a way. And that is where I could say some internalized patriarchy shows up when in your ideas, what you're talking about, use your body, because you are then taking this man who was already objectifying you and objectifying yourself further or more or concurrently. It is silly to me.
Yeah.
Sex does sell, and you cannot, again, take away accountability from the fact that you are then objectifying yourself in the same way that you just beat up this man over the head for 20, 40, 50.
Right.
You're doing the same thing. I guess people just feel like, oh, if I'm gonna get paid for it, it's cool. You got paid for it the whole time.
Absolutely. Sorry.
What? My bad, y'all. Like,
No. I completely agree. And Michelle says she also agrees. And as far as like, sex sells, that's just the way, that's just society, right? Things that have been taboo in the past are, more interesting. We're going to play up to it, whatever the case may be. But I think sex sells does not excuse the behavior of,
it does not excuse.
I'm gonna essentially gaslight this man, right? I'm gonna pretend like I'm interested. I'm gonna get everything I can get out of him
for a free meal,
and then I'm
going to use you and treat you as if I'm interested,
and not take accountability when that man is fucked. Right? And you can't trust anyone else.
Relationship, and I'm going to hold you to these standards and these values that I don't uphold to myself. And then I'm going to use you and like leave you broken and mad, essentially, at every other woman that you ever come across. And then you're told to heal. And it's like, how am I supposed to heal when I can't trust? Like, I'm told to trust the same women that hurt me. And every time I go to a different woman, I'm either dealing with the baggage that you didn't heal from, or you dealing with the baggage that I didn't heal from. But unless both of us are walking into this healed, somebody's bringing some baggage, and it's coming back as a blowback.
I mean, generally, I think that you'd be hard pressed to find. I don't think you're saying fully healed, so you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
It's just generally, but that's an idea.
I can tell you, I'm not healed.
No, that's an idea that's on the internet, though. You know what I'm saying? Is that
right.
you can go through something fully healed
and coming with the like openness to understand where you're broken at and what's wrong with you,
right?
To be able to say, hey, listen, I have for me, for example, I have trust issues, and I don't like certain things. So when people get to a certain point and it's like shit ain't working, I'm a lead. Like, I'm a runner. So the shit that like don't work, or the second something ain't suiting me, I'm out, bro. I'm gonna pack my shit, I'm gonna go.
Yeah, and he tried that shit on me. I told that nigga take him out. Let me know you a little tired. You sound sleepy.
So I think where Michelle, the comment that was just up when Michelle was saying that she doesn't think individual accountability will save us from systems of oppression. We can hold folks accountable and destroy oppressive systems. So I think that is fair. I also think that, again, it's not, I struggle because I'm not, when I say I'm not super political, that means I don't care. I do not vote.
I can't. I vote.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool, but I know too much about the system of voting to actually play into it. You know what I'm saying? That's just for me and my beliefs, my household. I'll even say we don't do that. It's not something that we actively participate in. I also don't blame you for doing such either. You know what I'm saying? Right. But I think that when we start talking about systems, we forget that we're dealing with individuals on the baseline. At the baseline of things, we forget that we're dealing with individuals. I will say, even in the most racist aspects of my life, i.e. being in Kentucky or Tennessee, is that these quote unquote systems of oppression exist, but they're run by individuals. And when you can deal with people individually, or when people deal with themselves individually, those systems don't really stand up a whole lot. I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm not saying that there aren't people who are trying to hold them in power, but this, I imagine she's talking about patriarchy. Patriarchy is a ghost that y'all been chasing for a long time. And I feel like if you pay attention, that you will see that it is not patriarchy that is the problem. It is not patriarchy. Patriarchy is a phantom. It is a phantom and a symptom. I guess a symptom of something way bigger. To put my tinfoil hat on, and half of that is accountability personally and awareness personally, and the other half is like you get actual. It's called princess programming. You get a lot of quote unquote subliminal messages and all of that stuff. Not even to sound crazy about it, but it is what it is that's tying into all of this.
Sorry, Michelle is out here, okay? Even when you get rid of individuals, there's always someone else to take the mantle because it is a system, which is,
yeah, it's true, but that doesn't mean that individual accountability doesn't help. And being behind this system that says, oh, well, it's okay to do it, don't make it right. Like the same way y'all can say, oh, well, toxic men. I see way more toxic females than I do toxic men. When we see toxic men, we make sure to tell other toxic men. I've never seen a toxic female tell another toxic toxic woman tell another toxic woman that you're wrong and this isn't behavior that's becoming, or this isn't. We've been out and we've seen some women doing some like ratchet, wrong, whatever things, like whatever they were doing, and we were like, that's crazy.
That's not cute. But and maybe I just don't think it's just not my place to say that. And I'm not saying it's not my place to say that, but in certain situations, we're in DC. I'm not about to approach somebody and be like, that's not cute, sis. Keep it together. However, I have had, right, because I can't fight. Like, I'm a game in a sack and I'm not trying to get into that. But I have had, conversations with my friends if they are doing something that is off. I have had probably a couple drunken bathroom conversations with a stranger, but more or less, I do understand what you mean, that women, I think that's part of the issue, is that there is in the fact that there's no accountability, there is the feminism, and I use that loosely because feminism used to be, we just want to be equal, we want equal rights, equal pay. It's beyond that now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's just kind of like a facade to hide behind.
Mm-hmm.
When you feel like showing your ass, like,
yeah. And honestly, the movement that started it, it's not even done, because like there isn't equal pay and there isn't equal accountability on both sides as to why women make less. Like there is no reason for you to do the same job as me and to make less money than me. Like, period. None.
I mean, yeah. And that's part of the argument. But so Michelle has said, what is accountability to y'all?
Accountability is basically saying that, like, so I, as Jamal Winfield, can stand on air as a married man and say, like, there were some times in relationships that I was not the right person. I was not the right person for them. I did not do the right thing in those situations. I left a lot of women, like, fucked up. Like, but to this day, I can tell them, like, I'm sorry. And I can hold myself accountable because I was young, I was dumb, and, like, it was never going to work out. But a lot of women can't say that. And a lot of women will tell you, nah, he was the issue.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
He did everything wrong, and he did this and he did that. But they can't say, well, in the relationship, I might have not gave them as much attention as they needed. I might not have been there emotionally as they wanted to talk to me. I might not have given them as much of my time as I could have. I might have made myself more available for my friends sometimes than I made, myself available for her. And I can admit that and take account for that. And I can say, this is where I went wrong. So in my next relationship, this is what I want to do. I want to be there for you. I want to be accountable. I want to be held to a standard where I'm always there. And if shit don't feel right, I'm out. Ain't no cheating, ain't no hard feelings. Like, I'm gonna hit the motherfucking door. Unfortunately, every time I try to hit the door, I'm told to take a nap. So
it's worked so far. 5 years strong. But yeah, I think, accountability, much like you said, it's really just taking, so in any situation, right, they say there's, your side, their side, and the truth, right? So in any situation, as opposed to only talking about what someone did wrong in it, accountability to me is saying, this is what I did wrong. It's kind of like having a healthy argument, right? It's not saying you. It's, I feel this way. I did this. I understand where you're coming from. And I think you don't see that in a lot of adults in general. So it makes sense why, as a society, there is no accountability taken there, because in many, many, many relationships, conversations, friendships, you don't see it on a daily basis. So you're not going to see it on a national or global level.
Honestly, healthy relationships are boring for TV. It's boring.
You said for you?
For TV.
Oh, for TV, yeah.
On a national level, in the media, it's boring. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I purposefully watch messy ass reality TV for that very reason. I can check out. I'm like, look, their life is worse than mine. I'm cool with. But yeah.
So my personal brand is called It Be Your Own Self. How a couple years ago, it be your own friends. It be your own. Nah, nigga, it be your own self. It be you every time. 10 times out of 10, it be you.
Right.
Even when you think it's somebody else, you still have a hand in it. You still have a part in it. It's still.
So Michelle said,
yeah, it's personal ownership.
It's also interesting that we talk about individual accountability, yet it is often generalized that women as a whole evade accountability, especially when most relationship advice / gurus are geared towards women towards cis/heterosexual women.
Could you elaborate on that? Like, I mean, I understand the sentences you chose. I just don't know where you're going to be able to follow, for us to be able to follow up. Y'all following? Because I feel like that could go many ways.
I feel you.
So I think what she's saying.
I don't. No. I'm not trying to be funny either.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
She said, "Yeah, give me a second." But as you,
I feel like we
clarify.
should invite Michelle on. And just
I know, right?
I was wondering why when we was talking about the guests, like why that wasn't an idea. But okay,
you know what? I definitely said when this came up as a topic, we should invite Michelle.
Look, I like people to make their own decisions with what they have time for in their day. Okay.
I know, but she just.
Let's see.
I feel like between she said,
I'm sending it right now, love. I was already in the work.
Like I feel like in the manosphere, what I find is like
Michelle about to pop on with her bonnet and everything. Yeah,
I feel like it's like always two opposing forces when it comes to the relationship coaches online and stuff, and then there's like some people in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And I think that the coaches who are in the middle that preach about accountability for women end up getting put in like you're in the manosphere lane, and you know what I'm saying? They be like centrist as hell, but then
what do we call him? Do we call him Uncle Kevin?
Right. That's Richard. Right. Look, Rich in the comments. Rich.
Hey, I mean, I love you. You was hilarious to me.
But I think like when we're tackling this conversation, like, yes, we can have the conversation about patriarchy and blah, 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 blah. But I think the purpose of having this conversation separate of having the conversation about toxic masculinity is because we are supposed to be
taking accountability. Like literally, like
right.
Literally,
I mean,
it never fails. Every time you say toxic femininity, somebody will be but the patriarchy. Hey,
but
you are missing the point
of the world.
And I'm not saying they don't exist. And absolutely.
Absolutely. But it's much like Rich says. Rich says it's not that
she took the bonnet off.
Oh, the bonnet came off. It was snatched. You could tell that the bonnet just.
He said the bonnet. First of all, wearing a bonnet. Okay. Just want to say that.
We didn't know. Usually, I feel like you listen to us.
When Rich is like,
I was chilling on the couch about to play a game. Not even gonna lie.
That's exactly what they mean, and no one wants to hear that shit from Kevin Samuels. Why?
I think that Kevin, a lot of his sugar gets mixed in with his shit. A lot of his sugar gets mixed in with his shit, and people only hear the shit.
Yeah, but since Michelle has joined us,
what you got to say, girl?
Let's get our clarification.
Okay, cool. So this is me. To give some context. For me personally, I get a little bit annoyed when we talk about accountability because I feel like people throw it around a lot, but I really don't think people know what they want when they're asking people to be accountable. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I ask myself, when we look at the industry of like relationship advice gurus, like the wife schools and stuff like that, there's a lot of media and attention directed towards how women should behave and perform their femininity, especially in relationships with men. So I ask myself, in a society that says that women evade accountability, while we're simultaneously talking about the importance of individual accountability, where does that leave us when we continue to generalize an entire gender and saying that we evade accountability when they're making literally millions of dollars of women who are trying to hold themselves accountable to the various ideas of what it means to be in a relationship?
Well, see, those are like, I think that those are things that are, what's the word when you put two things together that are kind of separate on their own? I can't figure out what the word, but I love it. It's just slipping my mind right now. So I do think that as a general idea, somebody who grew up female, who still goes by woman, I was going to transition at a point, who's always in my transition had more to do with the fact that I thought it was a man. I thought, this is my belief, I do not hold that belief anymore. So if y'all hold on to the patriarchy, I can't help you. But that I thought it was a man's world. I idolized men in a way that I was like, well, in order for me to feel better about myself, I need to be them. That was me accepting a message about women in conjunction with a message about men. When I learned as I got older that neither one of those things are true, we all fucked up. And we all have men have their privileges and their pros and their cons. Women have their pros and their cons. And one thing I know as somebody who grew up this way is that I am able to, if I turn on the waterworks, it's a done deal. Men got that right until they a certain age. I got that right as long as I live. That as soon as the waterworks cut on, I can look a little, whatever was on the table is off the table. And so that's what we're talking about when you say we generalizing. Yeah, because there are some general things that women can do that men can't. The same thing with kids. You know what I'm saying? But then when we're talking about the relationship sector, I think that I understand what you're saying, that there are women buying into this idea, or men buying into ideas of what accountability looks like from relationship gurus. But then because I failed in that place, I'd often have to say, you have to take some personal accountability and say they can't fix your relationship because they don't know you.
Yeah, and then I'd say on top of that a lot of that industry is not necessarily built off of accountability. It's built off of playing into you as a woman, usually women, and your biological clock. Time's ticking. I need to meet somebody. Like, I'm desperate. I'm gonna go do this relationship coach thing. It's not actually buying in because I care about my partner's well-being. I care about his mental health. It's not you. I'm not saying that's everybody, but it's not based off of that. It's based off of, I'm trying to get into a relationship, a healthy one, because I'm not trying to be abused in any way. So this is kind of a trustworthy way, and I'm trying to have a baby. I mean, I watch Married at First Sight, right? That's
what they say a lot.
All of those women are like, I'm ready to have a kid. I've been trying to date.
It's really about actually wanting to experience life and grow with another person.
And the experts do know a lot, and they do put you together based off of some really great things. But it fails because you don't go into it prepared to accept that man as a whole person. You go into it with an expectation.
You just brought up something that me and you have talked about, right? Like, I've dated women, I've dated men, like, and I've had sex with men. So there's a level of thing I have there. But I've dated women primarily and have had long-term relationships with women. Women are selfish, extremely selfish. Normally feminine women are extremely selfish, and we could say this is the type of women that I date. Sure, but I think most masculine folks have all been bitching about the same thing. So there's some level of like, yeah, we might be on to something that women do not want to hear at all. Don't want to hear. I have to constantly remind my woman to think about me in the ways that she requires and expects me to think about her. Currently and in the past, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I have to be like, so, hey, I've been breaking my back to give you the things that you would like. I exist, not just to serve you. And that's how a lot of women tend to treat their partners. So when Brittany said something about like, they go into these things and they have to be taught. Something you said just reminded me that like a lot of them are then being taught that they need to consider somebody else outside of their own needs and wants within a relationship.
Taught to be like independent and strong and like.
Well, there's two different messages, and that's the other thing. There's two completely different messages. There are the women who are, I'm trying to be taught how to be a partner so that I can get to where I want to be. I want the wedding, I want the baby, I want the happiness. And then there's the other message of, I'm a strong, independent, usually Black woman. You don't really hear it too much, at least not specified. It's not, I'm a strong white woman, I'm a strong Asian woman. It's usually, I'm a strong Black woman.
It's not usually there.
Right. But because culturally, it's not the same mindset. But so those are the two like overarching messages when it comes to relationships. I will be the first one to say I am not a strong Black woman. I was not set up to be a single mother. I feel that. Yeah, my shirt's a lie. No, I mean, in general, like I respect single mothers, all that, like 250%, but that is just not the life for me. And I struggle every time. I actually avoid doing things if Jamal can't be there when we have all 3 kids and we need to do something. So I will be the first to say that message is not for me. I cannot subscribe to that. I think that women are incredible. I think we are super women, superheroes. But I think that, and we take on a lot. And I also think that's the other thing. That's the other side of toxic femininity, right? Is that we take on so much that we forget about ourselves. So there's the toxicness of putting down men and putting down whoever. But then there's also, in order to be feminine, I have to be the best mother I can be. I have to be the best wife I can be. I have to put everybody ahead of myself. And we suffer in that way too. So
women still put themselves first and God actively like do things to make yourselves feel better that cost more. Like you pay for getting your hair done, you pay to get your nails done. And these aren't just like things that like, oh, I need this. No, y'all expect this to be paid for or expect this to be done in certain cases. Not in every case,
but won't send me no haircut money. You know what I'm saying? You won't send me no haircut
money. I went from looking at him to looking at the camera, and the way you were looking at me, Shay, I felt very judged.
And I had some context real quick, especially like, hold up, for Black women, right?
I was waiting for somebody to pull it back. Thank you, Jamal. Thank you.
Like, hold on, like to add some context too about like some of the nuances. I think particularly about Black women. That's why I was mentioning like it's not just the patriarchy. Right. I totally get that, but I think that the positionality around our genders, particularly as Black people, but of course we're talking about femininity, so Black women, has always been very complicated in this country, in particular with our experiences. That's why I bring up Sojourner Truth's piece about Ain't I a Woman. Anna Julia Cooper kind of goes into this in her body of work, and so does Angela Davis, right? But the idea is that like, mostly speaking, Black women and Black people have never been able to necessarily achieve the middle-class white suburban type of thing where they were able to bring in maids, pay for all this kind of stuff and stuff like that, right? There's like a certain white supremacist connotation to how they perform their gender, and we can get into that some other point. I think for Black people,
I need you to clarify something for me before we move.
Yeah, what's up?
When you talk about Angela Davis, Sojourner Truth, and I forget the other name.
Anna Julia Cooper.
Yeah, I don't. These are not authors that I actually care
about.
I
got you. Okay.
So I need you to explain what you mean when you bring them up for reference.
That's what So for me, like I have a background in like political science, of course, but
I can tell. I can tell.
Black history, Black like gender studies, stuff like that. So I've done a lot of work. So these are like other Black women who have kind of teased that question because it's always been a tension when it comes to how Black women are viewed as women in this country because of also the added layer of Blackness, right? Where sometimes we are either hypersexualized or desexualized, sometimes depending on the ways that our bodies are structured, especially for fatter Black women, or for people who are doing whatever. So there's always been this kind of like back and forth about how people perform femininity. And then as we started moving into like the 1950s, historically, like you follow this body of work, Angela Davis writes out in her Women, Class, and Gender, it's like, Black women have always held jobs down. And it's a misconception that this idea that like men were always the breadwinners, particularly in Black households.
Yeah, I think that's crazy as hell.
Yeah, because Black
when they were talking that shit.
Like Black women were also doing other work. So I think now we fast forward to like nowadays and everybody has this romanticized vision of how households should work.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people have a very toxic relationship with how they perform their gender or how gender should be performed, right? I think about that too in my own personal experience, like growing up in a household where my mom didn't feel like I was feminine enough because I was a tomboy, but my dad not wanting to deal with me because he couldn't get over the fact that I was a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And how to like pull at those strings, or being told that like I wasn't feminine enough because I wanted to play football, but then told that like I couldn't hang out with the boys because I also wanted to play in makeup. Right, like it's a very like interesting pool and dynamics. So I think when we start talking about toxic femininity, we also have to see that a lot of people, to be honest, as of right now, have not necessarily seen a healthy version of femininity.
I don't think that there's I think that a healthy version of anything is idealized. I think that. So even calling something toxic is hard to say when, for me, what sits well in my body, my spirit, the way that I see masculinity or femininity is that it's a spectrum, and you oscillate on one side a little bit more than the other, and we have an idea of what we would like. Everybody individually have an idea of what they would like anything to show up as, and depending on who you are and how you grade or judge me is how you decide how feminine or masculine or good or healthy or toxic I am. I do think that, so that's why I was just saying, for me, it's always accountability, regardless of what we call it. It is a lack of personal accountability for the way someone shows up in their day-to-day lives. If they decide if they are playing into these traits that are stereotypically feminine, we notate that as a feminine thing that they're doing. And so I think that's where the waters get muddy. But to talk in generalizations, to me, there are some ideals that are just bad. I don't need you to be super soft, because I understand people got trauma. You know what I'm saying? I'm not out here telling you that you need to be in your soft life and all of that. You know what I'm saying? Or that you need to be doing this and you need to be doing that. How your gender decides to express, how you express your gender or your sex or whatever the words are, is your business. And who you choose to lay with at the end of the day.
Ain't got shit to do with
I ask myself, is it really toxic, or is it just that people aren't a fit for you? Because in a sense that, like, there are some people, like, to the example, like getting hair done, getting nails done, things like that. There are some people who want their partner to do that. And there are other people who are okay with paying for that because it makes them feel comfortable in their role in that relationship. So I sometimes ask myself, is it that we're attributing the toxic label to femininity because it's just not a fit for us? Or are there actual traits of femininity that are toxic as a whole?
No, right now, that are toxic as a whole. I think.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, if so, I would love for us to like name that, as opposed to like the individual aspects of things that may not necessarily be a fit for us, if that makes sense. So like, kind of like I brought up earlier.
What I feel like this question is doing is taking away from where we went to, which was trying to get the accountability piece into. I feel like when I talk to people who have political backgrounds, there's a circular conversation that happens. And it always kind of circles, especially when women are the topic of conversation. And if it's not happening, then fine, but I can't let it happen. And if it is that it's moving away from, again, the accountability of women. We named things before you got on the show that we felt like were toxic traits. And I don't mind doing it again, but they also aren't traits that are set. We also said they aren't traits that are separate of femininity, and the way that they show up is sometimes crazy, which is a fair thing to say. So it's like circling back to this, well, is it women or is it women or is it women? Because that's what it sounds like. It's like, yes, it is. Yes, and yes, it is. And no, it's not. In totality, everybody's messed up. But yes, it is women, and that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, I'm not negating that. I'm saying let's talk about those general toxic traits. Like, again, so then that way, because my thing is, if we're talking about individual accountability, right, then I want to know what are the general toxic traits overall that people need to be looking out for as the individual, if that makes sense. So like let's start naming them like in a list format, like what they are. And I know we talked a little bit about it, but I didn't feel like we really got to like the meat and potatoes, because I still feel like there's more there in the conversation of what those toxic traits are. So that you're talking about from the joke. Because my thing is like kind of like how we just talked about like people who think that like there's only one way to conform your gender. I would consider that a toxic trait. And that's something that people need to hold themselves accountable to unlearning and stuff like that, because they perpetuate a lot of toxicity amongst other relationships that they have, whether they're romantic or just friendships or just societally. So that's where I was trying to get at, because I think that like when we talk about toxic femininity, sometimes it does happen where we do kind of get pigeonholed with like the romantic partnerships or that type of stuff. And I think the individual accountability is also about how people are being accountable to the community as a whole in all aspects of relationships, not just romantic ones. So that's why I was asking. This isn't like a circular political conversation.
Right. I get what you're saying. So I think that is obviously one of the traits that you just mentioned. Shay had also mentioned the selfish behavior, and that is a learned behavior, because as a child, we raise our little girls to be spoiled little princesses for the most part, right? There are maybe more restrictions on dating or more restrictions on whatever the case may be, but we don't expect little girls to take out the trash or have these larger responsibilities than what their age is, you know. And but little boys at 7, the moment you can pick up a trash bag, it's I need you to
pounds down the street.
With
no help. Get down the street, boy.
Come help me rake this up. Come help me mow the lawn. Come help me do all these things that boys are expected to do. But if you ask the girls to go in the kitchen, that's sexist. How can you ask me to cook and clean, but how can you ask that little boy to take out the trash? You don't think that also is reverse sexism? Like, are you not capable of doing everything?
I think that ideology is toxic.
Females are treated the same way as males. You are no different than me in the military. If I can lift this, you can lift this. And at work, that's how I treat my employees. You signed a contract saying you can lift over 50 pounds. Don't call me to lift it. Like,
I think it's a matter of the gender role stuff. Because I think that's the toxic trait, is the fact that we assign
genders
based on genders and to say that like that's what it is. But then also simultaneously what happens is, to your point, Jamal, is that we're pushing back against gender roles while also simultaneously trying to hold on to some of the traditional ones. Mm-hmm. Like now we have a society where people are like, no, I still want the man to cut the grass, take out the trash. Also, I'm not cooking.
Or the age-old question of, you know, how did our grandparents' marriages work? You know what I mean? Like, why can't we get back to what made those marriages work? Those marriages were not working. Mm-hmm. Like,
grandma was getting her ass whooped.
It's not even about that. I was going to say, he probably had a family 2 doors down. Like, there was things happening. They just didn't divorce. It was like,
and they didn't talk about it though.
And they didn't. And they, to this day, right? Like like I know my family doesn't listen like that, right? But my grandfather moved his mistress into my grandmother's home. Like, and this is in my lifetime, because her house had burned down. And like, you know, they never got divorced. My grandpa passed away in like 2002. But like at my sister's wedding, you really got up there and said a whole speech like he did. You know what I mean? It's like, we just gonna pretend like everything was Gucci. Okay, like you could have just gave well wishes, but really you gave advice, and you gave advice for a relationship that was not anything I'd want to take advice from. You know what I mean? So those relationships were never working. And a lot of that, like you said, are the gender roles. It's the way we're taught. And like when I was saying the selfishness is a result of that, it's because little girls are not taught to, honestly, to care about anything other than their child or their baby doll or, you know, whatever the next like nurturing thing they need to care about. But it's where we do not teach them to care about their brother's feelings or, you know, any of the other, like someone else other than yourself and whoever you're supposed to be nurturing, and then respect for your parents. Mm-hmm. So I think that is like the underlying issue. And then on top of that, you have society over sexualizing women and women playing into it, getting, you know, and not saying if you want to change anything in our body, change anything in our body, but like the push for BBLs and, you know, overemphasizing your body parts. I can honestly say I cannot see a reason why a BBL would be for me and not for attracting someone else, right? Like the idea of having an oversized ass is not for me. It's not, you know, like but I'm not.
Most men don't find it attractive. So the lie that it's for men is also crazy as hell too. Because I have yet to find one man that is like, BBLs, yes, let's go. Most of them do not like fake anything.
Yeah. That girl had the one that looked like it failed, like it looked like it dropped, like it. DJ name out, but it looked like it busted and like it had failed down. Like I think I might still have the picture. We were at this festival. I can't say because she works for.
It's fine. We were at a cannabis festival.
Yeah,
it's legal. But
So we were at a
neither here nor
cannabis
there.
festival and we were watching like the wrestling match, and we had seen like this woman with this like busted BBL. That shit was like sagging, it was leaning, it was terrible. Like it just
Yeah.
And then hearing about, you know, on the subject of a lot of that is for just for Instagram and not for like real people on Instagram. It's to be a part of this privatized world that somehow gets put on men. Which is like insane to me, but like it's sad that what a lot of women are going through right now, to change their bodies for something that most people just don't, and most people don't enjoy. The deaths that are happening, the botched surgeries, all of that. That's sad to me.
Yeah, I think people also just miss the opportunity to actually just talk to people for real. I think sometimes people get really caught up in social media and the images and the stories that they start making up these things about, not making up, but like more so internalizing what they see on social media and thinking that that's how the world works or how they need to present themselves. Because like even when we talk about like the gender roles and stuff, or like when you talk about like a Kevin Samuels or whoever the next person is to take up that mantle, it's like, yeah, he's a personality who's going to say all this stuff, but like when you actually sit down and talk
to people
or like actually have conversations, it really doesn't matter. It's just a matter about like what works for you. Those relationships, whether they're friendships, romantic relationships and stuff like that. And I think that people not being able to move away from that is what actually perpetuate a lot of toxicity. Because
so that's what
onto those ideals that really aren't rooted in any reality. They're just based on internet talking points that are getting people views for what, you know.
And that's what I was saying earlier. To something Jamal said about like it's movies. I was saying something about the dramatization of something on movies. Is because like this becomes people, and now social media, or not now, but for the last 10 to 15 years, social media, it's been so it's not gender roles in itself. It's the ideas of what people believe that what they are supposed to do based on, like you said, like a lot of fake. It's just not. If you talk to people, I don't know a little boy that's not nurturing. I don't know one. I do know. I understand when they say that nurturing is a feminine characteristics, but if we acknowledge that men aren't devoid of feminine attributes and women are devoid of masculine attributes, what are we really talking about anymore? What are we really talking about?
You're upholding these standards and traditional guidelines that don't exist in these traditional households. Like if you come to our house, Brittany doesn't cook as much. Like not saying that she can't cook or she doesn't. I do the cooking. And like no one who's ever come over is like, why is your wife sitting down while you cooking? Like
because it tastes better.
No one cares.
Don't let she can't boil a noodle. Don't let her. It's like
I think that's where again when we start talking about the individual accountability, I think it's really about, again, the root of it really is that people just need to talk to people, right? And when we start talking about like those kind of things, it really started to like, I guess, like take a step back from like these romanticized and idealized versions that people are perpetuating. Particularly, I say online because that's where I live. I live on the internet, but
you don't see that type of stuff when you deal with people in real life, right? No. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. It's like a cloud gets removed from your eyes when you actually pay attention and nobody operates the way that like social media does.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I always think it's interesting. That's why it's like the buzzword on social media is the accountability. That's why I always kept asking, like, what do y'all think? Like,
I think that's easy for us to say because we're millennials, right? So we're at an age where we did not have the internet. Now, and we see how the internet is and we're more connected to people, but we're able to discern, for the most part, like the differences between internet world and real world. But that's not the case for the younger generations. That's not the case for the people who, might be like 15, 16, and for the last 3 years, their life has been only internet interactions with any other human being.
Because we grew up without the internet. Like they grew up with the nature of the internet at their fingertips.
It's not just the young people though either.
Yes.
No, it's not just, but I'm saying that's what no, it's not just. And that's why I was like, more or less we're able to discern because we've been on both sides. But
yeah. Because I was about to say the older people do it it's with social media, but it's like it's with shows and the stories and the this and that. A lot of bad behavior on both sides get perpetuated. Because
one thing that gives me hope about social media, at least with young people, is that like they really just don't care about necessarily like not when I mean like don't care. I mean talking about care about the image or the perfectionism of portraying like everything's perfect or like they're not quote unquote trying to figure it out. Because I even get that sometimes like for my own family when I talk to like older family members, they'll be like, "Oh, watch out what you post on social media," and I was like, nobody cares because they want to, you know, hear authentic conversations. And I feel like that's the only thing that gives me hope about young people is that even though they're online, what they don't have an issue with is saying like, look, I'm still trying to figure this out. This don't seem right. This, that, and the other, and really trying to get there. And I think where some of the connection could be when we're talking about generations is us being able to connect those dots for them. Because I think like, at least for me, because like, I mean, like TikTok got me in a chokehold. I see the young people on there and they're trying to figure it out. But again, like a lot of people aren't really talking about because for older folks, they're stuck in this idea of like, what I got to say is perfect. I don't want to make a mistake. Right. Blah, blah. And it's like, no, like, especially if we're talking about like toxic femininity in the case of that, is that like, especially now in the conversation that we have around gender expression, gender expansion, pronouns even being a part of the conversation. I feel like young people are starting to get there, but I think it's like, again, continuing to have to push back against like the pressures of like, whether it's from family members, older generation, stuff like that, to perpetuate some of those toxic traits that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think before we kind of wrap it up, because I feel like we've already kind of come to the solution, right? The solution is view people as that's the solution to everything, right? As an adult at this point, like unlearn some of the things that you've learned, but you know, view people as wholes and view people as individuals, right? Like everybody needs to be
called a person.
Yeah, but taken as a whole, right? Not like, you know, this is what makes you this and this is what puts you, my words, I'm fucking up words. What I'm trying to get to is I think the part that kind of irks everyone when it comes to toxic femininity, and especially men, and we're not talking about relationships, is the way society views women in a situation. So, you know, Amber Heard, Johnny Depp. The moment she said something, Johnny Depp's career was over until it went through court.
We all loved him in Pirates of the Caribbean.
It was a guilty and
automatically, you know, everyone just, you know, goes and supports the woman in the favor.
And some people still believe after that court case that he is guilty.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's when it starts becoming an issue, when men feel like there's no use in trying. Same with custody. Why fight for my child when every single time they're going to, and it's not the case because I'm living proof that's not always the case, but every single time they're going to side with the mother. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot of times men just feel disheartened because society is going to view the woman as a better fit in most situations.
Because they start crying,
or
and it's automatically, right, you're the bad guy.
Brittany, you been crying lately in the middle of arguments?
I always cry in the middle, but I cry in the middle of arguments because I mean, like, not because I'm trying to sway it, because I'm mad. And that's how that's just how it's coming out. Or I'm trying to suppress something so it comes out in tears. Like I cry because
I relate, Brittany. It's okay. I relate to that.
Like, just keep talking. Like, don't mind me. Like,
right. That's not to say that all women's tears are manipulative.
All of them. I'm
not saying that at all.
But I'm not doing it to manipulate. But I do know people do it to manipulate, right? Like, that happens all the time.
But especially white women. But
it's always your emotions. Like, you come in, you angry, and you like, yo, I'm so upset. I got all these great viewpoints and I'm ready to break this down and I'm ready to tell you how I feel. And as I'm sitting there and I'm telling you how you're wrong, it's just like, okay, I'm sorry. How could you? Like,
how could you tell me that my behavior is affecting you? Right. How could you tell me
that's not what those tears are? Not in this case.
But it's like you're sitting there, you're sobbing, you want these tissues, like, here we go. Like, let me grab tissues for you. But at the end of the day, like, I'm telling you how I feel.
And I respect
and you can't hear this because it's like, it's what about you? Now I need to be hugged. Now I need to be loved. Now I need to be told.
That's a fact. They love that. And that's a part of us feeling like it's selfish too.
Yeah, like it's
I'm coming to you telling you how you messed up, and now you want me to hug you and cater to your feelings.
Like, love up on you and tell you it's okay. Like, you hurt my feelings, but now I'm okay at you because you're crying, and now it's a scene. Now it's a thing. Now people can't call you. Now people can't talk to you because they're looking like, well, what's wrong with you? No, what's wrong with me? Because now my feelings are hurt and I can't say nothing because you sitting there, you in tears. And that's what men have to deal with. Like, once
Michelle's face looks
crying,
like
well, no, so for me, because I actually went through something very similar to that. I was on the end where I was like articulating how somebody hurt me, and then they started crying, and then I had to console them because they were hurt by what I said.
Right.
I would say though, in that moment, because I've been unpacking this in therapy, is that sometimes we have to learn to just let people cry. In particular, because my thing is that, and I also learned this too, is that like the idea of us always being so quick to console people makes them, one, very dependent on us being that person to console them, and two, does not give them the ability to really sit there and reflect on their actions. So I mean, that's just my little tidbit from therapy, y'all.
I tell you that.
Like, because after it happened, I was like, I still felt some type of way because I was like, yo, like,
because your feelings didn't get addressed,
and now they, extra sad. Now I spend the extra 2 hours trying to make sure, they okay, but I'm still not okay. Like,
I wasn't even done talking.
Bring this back up because it's
I bring that up because sometimes we have this habit that we want to just put people back together, especially in moments like that. But I think, like, particularly, especially when we're dealing with like toxic femininity and stuff like that, I think one is people are crying because they're heartbroken at the fact that they hurt somebody that they care about. So I'm gonna give you space.
That ego be brutal.
Right, like, yo, you felt like you was doing a great job and you found out you weren't, and you got to process that. I get that, cry about it. But my thing is that, like, particularly being on the receiving end of it, my lesson for it that I'm just telling everybody is just let them cry about it. And you can ask simple things like, do you need a moment? Because we can continue this conversation when you're okay. As opposed to, like, consoling them in that moment, because it's like, boundaries, y'all, like boundaries. Like, we want to.
Yeah, I learned to just sit there. We just go.
Right, like, you can always be able to do it.
Done. All right.
So that's why I was making those faces, because it was just like you was describing, and I was like, "Yo, like, why am I going through this right now?"
I mean, but Michelle, I don't know if you heard me earlier, but that's accountability, right? It's saying how you are actually like a feet in a beast. You know what I'm saying? Like, essentially, you would be teaching this person that every time they, because we learn through conditioning. It's just a fact, whether we blatantly know something or not. If every time they cry, every time you approach them with something that they did, right, and they get to crying and you console them, that becomes a learned behavior over time, and then it's just you're never gonna, and then you're gonna be resentful, and it's gonna blow up at some point. Exactly,
and that's why I think it was like, part of it is that, like, again, people just should always be in a constant state of like reflecting on their actions and the impact that they have on others. I do think people need to be better communicators, particularly around, like, when we start talking about femininity, around expectations, right? So my thing is, I get tired of the conversation of gender roles in particular, because I'm like, if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. In the sense that, like, if I'm going to get with a partner and we're trying to make a household work, and we both said we ain't cutting the grass, well, we need to come up with a solution.
Right.
Okay, like, we're going to pay somebody to cut the grass, or what? Like, like, let's have these conversations now, as opposed to me being resentful because the other person ain't cutting the grass, but I expect because of their gender, they should do that.
They should do that.
Conversation with that, because, like, I'm queer as hell, so, like, it don't matter what the gender is of that person. I'm just saying in general, like, if I'm going to come in with these expectations, you need to name that up front and move on if it don't work, instead of trying to force people to fit into your worldview, or earlier what Jamal was mentioning, attacking their gender or their masculinity because they're not fitting into the box that you want them to fit into for your stuff. Like, that's where some of that toxicity comes in. And you got to hold yourself accountable in the sense of saying, like, where am I willing to move on? What am I willing not to move on? And can I communicate that effectively without manipulating people? Things that I want to do.
And that before we, like, I'd hate to close it without talking about that, about attacking, in the sense of, like, men not feeling safe in spaces with women, right? Because they feel like if once they open up, it's going to be used against them. I've heard that on the podcast. I've heard that from so many men, and it saddens me though, because as a woman who does not do that, I can genuinely say that in none of my relationships have I thrown something said to me in privacy in your face at any point in time, right?
But it happens to all of us.
Absolutely. And I understand that. But that's what I mean by it saddens me as a woman who does not do that, to know that that's, you know, constantly weaponized to the point where, you know, men feel more comfortable sharing their feelings only with men, and that their relationships will never actually grow without that emotional transparency. And when you do get into a relationship with someone who isn't going to do that, like tearing down those walls, it's hard. But like body shaming men, you know, oh, you got a small dick, like all of that, like really does.
You too fat, you too short.
Oh, while you talk about it, like that level of emotional violence, you have the physical violence aspect.
Mm-hmm.
There is it is most commonly known that men will their level of brutality, a lot of times we look at it as inhumane, but we don't look at women's brutality in the same way a lot of times. Or like when a dude is trying to leave and he's trying to leave sometimes, and I've even been in a situation like this, trying to leave peacefully. You got the woman cutting your shit up, setting your shit on fire, smashing out your windows.
They not letting you go. You can't go.
I seen a video where a girl drove a car into the man's house. Like, the things we feel like we're entitled to do because we perceive some level of hurt or want or something, sometimes it's insane. It is like insane. And I've even been on that level of rage of like, and I had to stop myself like, what am I really doing?
I will say, right, it goes both ways. You hear about, I mean, we literally just heard recently the star, and we'll talk about on Saturday, of Alabama basketball team just shot and killed a woman, or was a part of.
But you're doing the thing that we said we would not do. And I said it in the beginning.
I know, I'm saying that. I'm just saying, you know, it's on both sides. I'm not saying, but I'm not saying.
I started it out that way.
So I think with Shay's point, though, like with Shay's point, I think the issue is that because society as a whole views women as something to be dominated, as quote unquote weaker than men, the anger and the violence transpires a little bit differently. You won't necessarily find too many women. There are some women who do hit men, and abuse is abuse and it's wrong regardless of who's doing it. But you will find that women typically act out their anger a bit differently and hurt men in different ways than men who do take the more violent action of like beating, harming, or using extreme violence to kill people. And I think that like that's where some of the nuance is, but that doesn't necessarily like absolve that like people should really think about that in themselves, and the fact that like, yo, like this person really got you that fucked up that you finna
and that's what I'm saying,
like burn their clothes. And I think sometimes it's because a lot of times people view it as like a righteous anger. Like, you know, when women do that, people be like,
each article of clothing,
like, you know, that's always the thing.
Like you're slowly coming out of insanity. You can't even claim like each time you're like this. That's like,
and that doesn't make it fair. Like you're tearing my shoes, you're breaking my jeans.
Yeah, and it's like to what end? Because at the end of the day, you're still emotionally hurt by whatever happened in that relationship, and now this person's out of stuff, and now you probably gonna go to jail or you gotta pay some money or something. But I think that like
wait, to be real, I know plenty of women who also casually hit men.
Like, it's more of like it's an overtime thing, right? It's not I'm about to knock you out once. It's like every day. It's like you're getting on my nerves. I push you out my face. Like there is still physical content.
There's a level of shame about it because no man wants to come out here and say that like, oh, I let this girl be. To be honest, like it's really hard because I've done like some intimate partner violence work with people, and it's a real thing in terms of that shame that happens there, and some people do weaponize it in order to get away with like abuse and holding abuse with men. And I think too, also, you know, there's conversations around how people like try to use people. Now, I'm not talking about the gold digger aspect because there'll be some people talking about people being gold diggers and they ain't got no gold to dig, but on the flip side, there are women out there who do, for lack of a better word, financially abuse men as well. right? Like in terms of like really being able to like, take a hold of that, take control of their finances, really using them up in a way to better themselves in a very non-consensual way. I say that because, the sugar daddies, do what you got to do, get the bag. That's a very consensual manner of doing it. But like, there are other people who like do manipulate men in this kind of way. And that also too is an act of violence. Like the abuse overall is an act of violence. And I think that anybody, if you're a man out there who is currently being abused, I do highly encourage for you to contact. Most cities have a local court. They do have a DV court section. They do have resources for you. Don't be intimidated by the fact that a lot of it is geared towards women. That's just because of the statistics. So don't mind that. There's also shelters out there for men who do need help. And last but not least, talk about it. Know that there are people who are here for you, whether they're your friends, whether there are like your acquaintances and stuff like that who will get you those resources. But I really don't want to end the episode with us talking about violence and trauma and knowing that there are possibly some men out there who are, for all intents and purposes, being abused. So just know there are resources for you in that regard to really get you the help that you need to get out of those kind of situations, because they are damaging and they are hurtful and people are dying, to be honest. And so that's my hope to y'all and those who are listening to this podcast is like, get you the help that you need, get out of those type of situations. I don't even think that's even more toxic femininity. It's just toxic people at that point, and evil people who decide to use men in that kind of way. And you need to get away from them ASAP.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I couldn't even think of a better way to end the episode. I think leaving our audience with that is wonderful. So on that note,
thank you for joining us, Michelle.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being better than Rich, because I know he out there listening to this.
But yes, thank you for
back, Rich,
and for giving us, your point of view. We really do appreciate it. Saturday, Shit Talk Saturday, so we will be back Saturday evening at 8 p.m.
Okay. Rich gonna have some shit to say.
Always. As always, please like and subscribe on all social media. We're on TikTok, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Obviously, we're on YouTube.
We on Patreon.
We are on Patreon. So I will drop the link tree in the description. But yes, like, subscribe, follow on all of the places. And if you guys don't have anything else,
Michelle, you want to get the people a place to follow you so they could be like Obama?
I mean, you can follow me on Twitter. It's I am Sparky. So I'm Sparky. Same thing on Instagram. Same thing on TikTok. Don't follow me on Facebook. That's all I got.
And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay unapologetically Black. Have a good night.
Yes.